I'm Matthew Kelly, and welcome to Profoundly Human. My guest today is Kate Volman, the author of Do What You Love. Do What You Love, a guide to living your creative life without leaving your job. I think a lot of people, they have some creative pursuit that they want to explore, maybe something they did as a child that they want to rediscover, but for all the reasons of growing up and responsibilities and expectations and obligations, we step away from these things. Kate, it's so good to have you. How are you today?
Oh my gosh, Matthew, thank you so much for inviting me. It is such an honor to be with you here today.
You're very welcome. I'm excited to talk about your book. I'm excited to share your book with the world and with our listeners. What was it like writing your first book?
Writing my first book was harder than I thought it was going to be, actually. It was very challenging, but it was one of the most fulfilling things that I have done in my life. And it was surprising, the process. You know, I love talking about creativity. I love talking about the creative process with artists and writers and people that create things in the world. And so you would think I would know that it's about the process. And I learned so much about the creative process and how important it is for us to have a practice in your writing and being able to write a book that wasn't really that great to begin with. I mean, that's what happened. I feel like I wrote this book and then I actually had an opportunity to share it with you. And I said, Matthew, I feel like this is a thing, but it's not good. And so to kind of go through that whole process was really interesting, but I loved it and I hated it all at the same time.
What does it feel like now to have it in your hands?
Oh my gosh. Well, now it's incredible. It feels good to achieve something, right? I think in this very distracting world where we can say we have a lot of dreams, it can be very easy to kind of have that shiny object syndrome when we get so excited about a project and then we move on really quickly. But to have the discipline to say, hey, I'm gonna write this thing and focus on this thing every single day and work on the process of it all and finalize it and then get it out into the world. There's just no better feeling. It's unreal.
The book hit #1 in a couple of Amazon categories, which was fantastic. What sort of feedback are you getting from the book? I know it's early days, but what are you hearing from people?
Yeah, that's the best part. I feel like it's been so incredible to get text messages or phone calls or even looking at some of the reviews on Amazon. And the feedback has been very specific actions that people have taken, which brings me so much joy because I've heard people say, I read this book and it inspired me to dust off a manuscript that I had been working on years ago and I never finished it. Or I played the piano when I was younger and I loved it so much. And I took out my keyboard and I dusted it off. And now I've been playing every week. Someone mentioned to me that she thought she was way too old to learn how to play the violin, but it's something that she had in her heart for so many years, but she never did it. And she said, I read this book and it really inspired me. And she went out and got a violin and started taking lessons on YouTube. I mean, that is huge. That was the whole purpose of me wanting to write this book, is for people to read it and not just put it down and think, oh yeah, I'm inspired, but I'm actually going to do something. I'm going to revisit some of the creative pursuits that I've had in my life that I just haven't made time for, and to take that next step to do one thing that's going to help you kind of revive your creativity that you might have lost over the years.
Yeah. So the title, Do What You Love, the subtitle, A Guide to Living Your Creative Life Without Leaving Your Job. Obviously, a lot of people think I can't do what I love because I can't monetize it in a way to support my life, support my family, that sort of thing. You've set the book up as the series of myths, the 7 myths. Okay. And what I would like to do is go through them one by one and just briefly touch on them and have you speak into each of them. So the first myth is it's not possible. Tell us about the first myth.
So it's not possible. This is, especially in the work that we get to do at Floyd Coaching and talking to so many people about their dreams, people have lost a lot of hope. They actually don't believe that they can achieve their dreams. They believe that I have all these responsibilities and now this is just life. It's heavy and it's hard and I have to go to work and pay bills and sure, we have to do all of those things, but it doesn't mean that we can't bring joy into our lives. And so the myth of it's not possible, the first thing that we have to kind of debunk is we have to get back to that place of knowing that it is possible. It is possible to create that better future for yourself. And part of doing that is by exploring your creativity, by reconnecting with some of the dreams that you would have lost. So unless we believe it's possible, we're not going to have the energy to do the things that we need to do, right? If we actually don't believe that on the other side of our hard work, we're going to get to that other side and we're going to achieve something, then we're not going to have the motivation to get started. So that's the first myth. It's not possible. We have to believe it's possible.
And for someone who doesn't believe it's possible, how do they move from disbelief to belief?
Oh, that's such a good question. So in the book, I talk about how when we're younger and we're learning how to ride a bike, we might think that, oh, it feels impossible. We've never done it before. So we don't know how to do it, which if we stop there, it doesn't feel attainable. But what happens is our parents push us to get on the bike and we have to start riding the bike. And then we have the training wheels and we're riding that bike and we fall down however many times and we keep getting back up. And then we actually start riding that bike. And so we have so much evidence in our lives that show us that we can do hard things. And so just kind of looking back in your life and rediscovering, wait, what was some time in my life that I thought something felt super impossible and now I do it. And now not only do you do it, but it might be common practice for you. It's something that's very easy simply because you now have that belief that it is possible. So that's the first thing, is to just look back in your life and think about some of those times, those moments where you felt like you couldn't do something and then you were tasked with doing it and pushed into it, or you gave yourself that challenge to do it and you made it happen. Like everyone has evidence in their lives of that.
So if someone wants to be a painter, or someone that's their thing they love to do it as a kid, or they've always wanted to do it and maybe never done it, what is the first practical step you would say to that person? Do what?
Okay, so this is great because this is the biggest challenge for people. We overthink everything. We overcomplicate, we overthink. So, okay, you want to paint. Amazing. What's the first thing you could do? So I had a friend of mine, she just ran into this because she is running a business. She was very stressed out. She loves to paint. So what is the first thing she did? She went to Michael's. She bought a bunch of supplies. She got home. She put it all out on her kitchen table. She had a blank canvas and she turned on some music and she just started painting. She just created it. Like, that is the first step. I always think about what is the one thing that you can do, like what is possible. If people keep focusing on what's not possible instead of what's possible, of course, we're going to keep making excuses to not do the thing. But there's in Stoicism, there's things you can control, there's things you can't control. So I always focus on what are the things that you can control. You can, even if you didn't want to go to Michael's and get some new supplies, what do you have in your house? Get out a notebook, take out your pen. Like, you could right now, we could do that right now. And that's the first thing. And once you start doing that, that's the energy that you get just from doing that is going to kind of push you into, oh, now I'm going to actually go get some more canvases, and maybe I'm going to take an art class, or, then your mind starts to expand and open up.
Very good. Very good. So myth number one, it's not possible. Myth number two, you're not good enough. Talk to us a little bit about that.
Oh, I feel like this one is so interesting because worthiness is something that shows up in so many people. And I happen to love psychology, and I listen to a lot of different podcasts around the human condition and our minds. And what I feel like so often comes out of when people are going through different challenges as to why they're not really pursuing what they want in life. If you dig really, really deep, like all the way, I'm no psychologist, but when you dig really deep, so much of that comes from worthiness and feeling enough. Like, we don't necessarily think that we have the skill set to do some of the things that we really want to do or to go after. And there's so much research that shows when people aren't going after a new job or starting a project or doing any kind of creative pursuit, because they feel like, oh, I'm not ready. I'm not there yet. I'm not enough. I haven't achieved enough. And, it's what's so interesting to me, Matthew, and actually you did a video that talked about two questions that really woke you up. And one of the things that you talked about was this feeling of enough. And I'm fascinated by people who have accomplished so much in the world. To anyone else looking from the outside looking in, they think, oh my gosh, this person is so successful. They've achieved so many things. And even those people like you had said something around, I have to think about that. Where does this insecurity come from? And I'm like, oh my gosh, like even Matthew Kelly feels this way. And I think about some of the other extremely successful people in the world. I remember that story where where Oprah shared that when Beyonce, after an interview, Beyonce was like, was that okay? To Oprah. I mean, that's insane. So we all, like, no matter what level we are at in our lives, we have this, I don't know, there's this like deep-rooted challenge of feeling like enoughness. And the way to get over that, I mean, we have to be very self-aware in knowing that we're feeling those feelings. And then how do we really get out of that? How do we really recognize that you are enough exactly where you are, who you are, everything that you've achieved, everything that you've accomplished? Like, all of those things are inside of you for a reason. And if we can come from a place of, I am enough, I can always get better. Every day I get to grow. But right now, I have everything that I need. I am enough. My voice matters. And when we start feeding ourselves that instead of, I can't do this until, like, there's a lot of untils in the world, right? I can't reconnect with my creativity until, I can't find another role. I can't fill in the blank, whatever dream you want to work towards. But no, that today is the only day that we have. And you can start right now, but only when we get to that place of feeling that we are enough.
Mm. So myth number two, you're not enough. Myth number three, you need permission. Talk to us about that.
Yeah, I feel so many people, we're waiting. We wait for somebody to recognize our brilliance and genius, right? Like, we want someone to pick us. We want someone to choose us. No one's going to do that. That just isn't how life works, right? I mean, I've had a dream of writing a book for a decade. I mean, that was one of my dreams for so long. No one was waiting for me to write a book. No one was coming to me saying, here, you're special, you need to write this book. No, that is just not what happens. And so we don't need permission to pursue our dreams. We don't need permission to start the podcast, write the book, pursue whatever it is that you want to pursue. And it can be challenging for us because I don't know where that comes from too, but that kind of feeling of, if I just keep doing things, I'll be chosen or selected. I mean, even in the roles that people are in at work, it's so important for us to speak up for the things that we want in our lives. And so there's an activity that I share in the book of writing your own permission slip, right? Like, we don't need to wait for anyone to give us that permission slip. You have your own. So I even say, like, write your own permission slip to do whatever it is that you want to do, sign it, date it, and then get after it, because that's the only permission that you need is from yourself.
What about if someone says, hey, I don't know what the thing I love is, or I'm not a creative person, or that sort of thing? What would you say to those people?
One of the things that I find interesting is I have gotten the question quite a few times, more than I expected, that is similar to that of, well, I don't have passion. Like, what if I don't even know what my passion is? And I found that to be really interesting, because everyone is creative. Creativity lives in everyone, and everyone is passionate about something. And again, going back to the work that I get to do with the team at Floyd, we talk to people about their dreams every day. And often when people talk about, well, I don't have dreams, it's simply getting started with a few questions like, what did you love to do as a child? Or I love the question, if you were going to get paid to learn a new skill, what would it be? That's such a great question around your creativity, because what skill would you want to learn? And that when that question is asked, what might show up is, oh my gosh, I would love to learn how to play the piano. I would love to learn how to write poetry. But you're not taking a writing class or a poetry class or signing up for piano lessons, because oftentimes people feel like it's a waste of time. Because if you're not going to do it for a living, if that's not going to be how you're earning an income, then why bother? But there's so many reasons to do that.
All right. So myth number 3, you need permission. Myth number 4, you need a reason. Walk us through that.
Yeah, you need a reason. So this goes back to why you should sign up for the piano lesson if you want to take piano. You don't need a reason. The only reason to explore your creativity is because you find something interesting and fascinating. And I think we often we live in this world of we're in the book I share in business, we talk about ROI, right? Like your return on investment. And you look at, especially like in marketing, oh, if I'm spending this amount of time and money, I need this amount of investment back. But what about your return on creativity? Like your return on creating what that does is things that we just don't really think about. When we allow the time to create, and just for the sake of it, for no other reason than you are curious about it and you want to explore, when we do that, oh my gosh, we get so much more energy. We become a better spouse and parent and coworker and leader and all of those different areas of our lives, because we have more energy, we have more excitement and passion, and all of those areas in our lives are fueled. And so we don't need a reason to be creative. You don't need a reason to start painting or drawing or gardening or cooking or learning a new skill, other than you find it fascinating and curious. And in the book, I share that your creative pursuits, they are living and breathing inside of you. They want so badly for you to tap into them, because they know the power that they have to transform your life. Like they know that when you tap into your creative pursuits, that you are going to feel more joyful. You are going to start to see things differently. You are going to have more hope. You are going to, that myth of it's not possible, you're never going to think that. You're going to know that all of these things are possible. And so that is what we get to do when we just allow ourselves, hey, I don't really need a reason other than the fact that I want to try something new.
Yeah. Which it's interesting because of where we are as a culture and our obsession with busy, our obsession with effectiveness and efficiency. We no longer value some of the things that are so important and most important to the human spirit. And I think that includes spending time creatively. I think it includes spending time in reflection, prayer, meditation. I think it includes things as simple as reading, because we've become so obsessed with hurry and busy and urgent that we diminish the value of these things. Do you think that most people define creativity too narrowly and that prevents them from discovering their creative pursuits? So I think if you say to people, oh, like, what do you like to do creatively? They might say, well, I'm not a creative person. And then you say, well, what do you mean by that? They might say, well, I can't paint and I can't write a book and I'm no good at music. Do you think most people tend to define creativity too narrowly?
Yeah, I definitely do. I think when people talk about creativity, we immediately think about an artist or a musician or someone that is actively creating and putting something out into the world. We don't, and people, we don't really talk about it. I think creativity is an interesting topic where we don't really talk about what it is. We don't really talk about why it's important in business and in life. And so often when people talk about how they're not creative, when you get them talking about what they're passionate about, when you get them talking about how they're solving problems. I used to work with someone who she was an accountant and she was like, I am an accountant, meaning I am not creative. I mean, she said that those things just don't go together, but I loved sharing with her how creative she was in how she was so passionate about spreadsheets. I mean, I don't want to be in Excel all day. She does. And so it was so great because I would ask her to send me some numbers and she would give this Excel spreadsheet. And then it would come with these different graphs and charts and just beautifully laid out. That is creativity because it was her ideas brought to life in her unique way. So she was given this task and then she kind of took it and ran with it. And so that is creativity, the way that you communicate, the way that you are in relationship with other people. All of those things are creativity. It's all of your ideas brought to life in a way that only you can create. So we're doing it every single day. It is profoundly human to be creative.
Yes, it is. All right. So myth number 4 is you need a reason. Myth number 5, there is not enough time.
Yeah, there's not enough time. This one's a big one. And this one was interesting to write because everyone obviously has very different calendars and schedules, and there's busy moms and parents that have lots of kids running around and some people that don't. So it's always an interesting topic, time. But what I do find universal in everyone that we get to speak with is how we make time for the things that are important to us. And when we really do a time audit of how we're spending our time, we can usually find pockets of time. And so in the book, I share the pockets of time meant for joy. So there is an opportunity for us to figure out, instead of thinking about all the reasons why it's not going to work or we don't have time for something, we get to focus on, okay, where can I find 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes? We live in an interesting world where I feel, at least this is how I felt even with writing the book, I put it off for so long because I felt like I needed to one day sit and write this entire book. like in an afternoon, it was just going to happen, when that's just not how it works. And so I had to figure out, okay, if I really want to pursue this creative pursuit, then I need to make time for writing. And then I created this writing habit. And so I made the time to sit down and write every day. And then I also gave myself a goal of writing at least 250 words a day. And so I created this habit. So I wasn't saying I'm going to sit down and unless I have 3 hours every day to write, I'm not going to do it today. No, it was 10 minutes here, 30 minutes there. We find those pockets of time. And so I think if people get really, really, again, going back to that self-awareness, we have to be really crystal clear on what it is that we really want in our lives and what we want to make time for, and saying no to the things that don't really matter. And that can be so hard because there's so many things in the world telling us that we should be doing all of these things. We should be pursuing more and doing more. And we don't even need to go into social media. I mean, the amount of time and energy that people spend on social media is just shocking. Like, people probably would truly be shocked if they ever got an audit on how much time they're spending online, on social media, online shopping for things that we don't need, all of those pieces.
So do you think that people overestimate how long it takes to produce the joy effect that comes from spending time in our creativity?
Do they underestimate?
They overestimate. Do they think I need 3 hours or I need a weekend, when in fact, if they spent 20 minutes, they would start to feel that joy, and that joy continues to invite them to pursue their creativity?
Yes. Yes. That is, yeah, we talk about in the seventh myth, but yes, it's the starting, right? We have to give ourselves those little pockets of time, and then we get more energy. And one of my favorite quotes that I share all the time is one of yours, which is, we overestimate what we can achieve in a year and underestimate what we can accomplish in a decade. And that is so true, because I think about it in a week, in a month, in a year. And so it's those little pockets of time that we have that actually accumulate so much more quickly than we think. I mean, look, we're recording this in August. I can't believe it's already August of this year. Time goes by so much, but anything that you started in January, if you would have done it every day or every week, that is huge.
Yeah.
But we don't think about it like that, because we're very much a society of, I want it now.
Yes.
Like, it needs to happen now.
Yes. All right. So myth number 5 was there's not enough time. Myth number 6 is it has to be perfect. Walk us through that.
Yes. Perfectionism is another one of those topics that I find so fascinating. And it was probably, it might have been the hardest chapter to write, which is kind of funny because I felt like it wasn't perfect yet. So, and I've had quite a few people reach out to me saying that this myth is the one that really hit them the most. They'll be like, you wrote this for me. This is my myth. But I think so often we feel like whatever we are putting out into the world or creating, it has to be perfect. Like, we need to look a certain way, or it needs to be a certain thing, or we don't explore because it's not perfect. It doesn't have this level of perfection that we want. And if we were waiting for everything to be perfect, the perfect time or the perfect equipment to, start a new project, we would never get started. And so what I was very intentional about the way that I wrote these myths, because you'll see that they kind of build on each other, because, it has to be perfect is very similar. Like, we have to feel like enough in order to create, and then it's never going to be perfect. And we have to know that and be okay with that and comfortable with that. Going back to my friend who decided to start painting again, what she created that day was not perfect, nowhere near perfect, probably wasn't even great, but she loved it. She loved it because it was something she created. And so we've got to get over this myth of perfection and just take the next right step towards our creative pursuits. And in this chapter, I talk about the passion loop. And the passion loop is essentially when we have this really great idea and we think, so let's say you have a creative passion to write a book. So you want to write a book and you think, oh, I would love to write a book. I would love that. And then almost immediately we think, oh, it's too hard. I don't know how. I'm not a great writer. All of those reasons why we shouldn't. And then we don't do anything about it. But then a week goes by, a month goes by, and we think, I want to write a book. And we are stuck in this loop. We just keep having that same thought because your creative pursuits are yours for a reason. They're inside of you. They're never going away. They're going to keep showing up until they get fed. And so the way to break out of the passion loop is taking the next right step. What is that one simple thing that you can do to get started? And then all that step does, it's actually a very powerful step because it then unlocks joy and passion and meeting new people and experiencing new things and learning new skills and fulfillment and all of those things that then allow you to keep moving forward. So we can get rid of this perfection and know, hey, I'm going to be imperfect all along the way. Every step of the way, I'm going to be imperfect because it's new things and it's stuff that I haven't done. And the perfection is a myth in general because there's no such thing as perfect anyway. So to try to actually get there is just debilitating for our creativity.
Yes, self-defeating proposition. So myth number 6 is it has to be perfect. And the last myth number 7, inspiration will strike. Talk to us about that.
Yeah, this one, I loved this myth because so often I speak with people who they're, oh, well, I really want to play the guitar. I really want to learn this new thing, but I'm just like waiting. Like I don't feel inspired. I don't feel inspired to write just yet. I don't feel inspired for poetry. And I always laugh because we never feel, well, inspiration comes from starting. Like it's the momentum. And I write about this in the book because I'm fascinated by muses and just this idea that there's these like muses that come down and kind of sprinkle this creative fairy dust on us, and it gets us inspired to do the work that we know that we're meant to do. And Stephen King talks about it in his book on writing, and I love his definition of it. But it's so interesting, just this idea. So I often ask my friends if I'm like, do you believe in muses? Like, do you think that you have to have a muse to actually start with your creativity? And it's like, no, the muses aren't there to sprinkle your fairy dust. Like they are only awoken when you start. Like they're attracted to the work. Like when you actually take that next step or you push forward in whatever creative pursuit is meant for you, then you start to feel that energy. There was this woman who said she worked and she loved creating videos. And she said, after work, I'm so tired. Like I'm tired. Like I don't want to go back to work and do these videos, even though I love doing them. And I asked her, I said, okay, but think about a time that you got home from work and you didn't feel like it, but you did it anyway. And she said, yes. I said, so how did you feel? And she said, oh my gosh, it was so funny. I had no energy. And then all of a sudden I started working on these videos. 2 hours later, she was thinking, oh, I'm just gonna work on it for a few minutes. 2 hours later, she was still working on the videos and she had so much energy and passion and excitement because it was what she loved. And so that inspiration was never going to come if she went and sat on the couch. It came because she fed into her creative pursuits.
Yeah, fantastic. So the book is Do What You Love, 7 Myths. Fantastic. Kate, last question. Someone who's sitting out there watching this today and they are moved by what you're saying, They know there's some truth in all of this. What's their first step? What would you encourage them to do as the first step?
The first step, I would recommend that they write down what brings them so much joy. Like, what activity brings you so much joy when you're doing it? And then we want to focus on what can you control. So what is one step that you can take to start activating that creative pursuit? What is one activity that you can do? If you want to start a podcast, great. What are your first 3 episodes? Get out a microphone, get on Zoom and record it, right? Like, focus on only the things that you have control over and don't allow your mind to go to the things that you don't have control over.
Yeah. All right. Very good. Our guest, Kate Volman, the book, Do What You Love. Grab yourself a copy. Thank you for making time.
Thank you so much, Matthew. This was so fun. I so appreciate you.
You're welcome. Take care now.